Okay, so the recording has started. So do you have any query? Did you get a chance to look at the previous sessions or anything from your side?
I just looked at the previous session, the test plan and the test strategy, and I don't have any
Mm-hmm.
question.
Okay, fine then. Let's start with today's session then. Uh, okay, so I hope my screen is visible to you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so today is the 11th session of this QA training, and let's see what we are going to cover today. So the topics that will be covered today is the first one is the configuration management. What are the different configuration management? What are the elements there? Then we'll see about the risk and testing, how risks affects our testing and how those can be mitigated. And finally, we are going to talk in detail about the incident management. So incident is basically the defect or bug that we have understood till now. So how those defects or bugs are managed, how we can log those, what is the life cycle of a defect. Then again, we are going to talk about the severity and priority that we have already discussed, but we'll again touch upon those things and we'll see what are the different type of severity and what are the different type of priority. Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the configuration management. So what do you understand by configuration? So when we talk about the development life cycle or the testing life cycle, so we have different type of configuration that we need to manage while the development is being done, and after the development when we start our testing or when we do our testing. So there are different type of hardware specific configuration, software specific configuration, the data configuration, and like the source code configuration, the configuration of the test script. So all these things has to be configured, and there has to be some tools, or we need some kind of softwares to configure these things and to manage those configurations. So it is used by both the developers and the testers as well. So the development and the testing team both has to manage these configurations and document these things. Okay, so now from the developer point of view, what are the different things that needs to be configured? So from the development point of view, they need to configure their source code, right? The code they are writing. So they need to configure those source codes. So to configure their source code, to maintain different versioning, because the code they are writing, so that needs to be changed in frequently, and those versioning has to be there. So suppose the developer has written some code and you have tested that, and now it's in the production. Now they want to add some more functionality, or during the production itself they have found some bug in it. Okay, now they want to change or add some code in it. So it's not like they can just go ahead and change everything in the code and make that thing in the production. That won't happen. So they need to keep the versioning of their code itself, so that in any time in the future, if they want to roll back to the previous code, they can do that easily. So for that, there are different versioning or code management tools that are available in the market, which they can leverage to keep the previous versions as well. So if required, they can use that in future. There are some other examples as well, like there are, so when we develop a particular product, so that is not like it will be used by a single customer itself. It might happen in the product based companies or product development companies. What they do is they develop a product, and then that particular product is being used by several customers. Now different customers has their own need, or they do some customized changes in their product, but the core of the product is same for everyone. So now in these cases, as well as there are some customized change for different customer, but the core of the product is same for all customers, so in that case also we need versioning of the product, right?
Mhm.
Are you able to understand that? Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
so for that we need some version control tools for from the development perspective, or even from the testing perspective. If you see the test cases that you are writing, right? So uh, when there will be changes in the product, so you will need some certain changes in the test cases as well. But say for there are different releases that are going on, okay? So for the first release you have a set of test cases which is being used by 4 or 5 customers. Now there are some changes that is required from some of the specific customer, and for them you are going to have the release 2. Now you also need the test cases which are written for the release 1, because some of the customer are going to continue with the release 1 specific functionalities, they are not going to go to the release 2. So that's why you need to keep your release 1 test cases, and at the same time on those release 1 test cases, on the top of those release 1 test cases, you are going to add or modify some of the test cases based on the new functionalities which is very specific to release 2. So in these cases you need to keep the test cases of release 1. So for your test cases as well, you need some of the version controlling tools through which we can control different version of test cases. So these are this comes under the configuration management. And in configuration management, it allows the tester to manage their testware and test result using the same configuration management mechanism. Now when you are getting your so you need test data as well while you want to test your test cases. So for that you need some particular test data, and you need to keep those test data for the next cycle of testing as well, because whenever you are doing a specific testing, so you need the particular test data, and for the next cycle of release you will be needing that particular test data. So you need to maintain those test data and also the test results as well, because like test results you can keep it as a proof of your testing, because sometimes it happens that you have tested something and it is working perfectly for you, okay? Now when it is going in some another environment, because we have already discussed that there are several different environments where the testing happens. So initially it's the uh, dev environment. So dev environment is basically where the development is happening, the environment that the developers are using for their development. After that it's a test environment where you are initially doing your testing, okay? So after that, we have the software integration testing environment, the SIT environment, where all those different components are integrated and tested together. So that is the SIT environment. After that we have other environments like, which is something like the production environment, and that is called the stage environment, okay? And then there is UIT environment as well, or UAT environment as well, which is user acceptance testing environment. In that environment the user acceptance testing is done, and finally it's the production environment. So for different for these different environments, and it also depends on the project you will be working on, how many different environments they are going to use. It's not like every product or every project will have this many different environments. Sometimes normally they have the dev environment, the test environment, and the stage or prod environment. So it actually depends on the project or product, on that how many different type of environments they're working on. So all these different type of environments are having their specific test data as well, and that's why you need to keep all this environment specific test data. And then the build process as well. I mean, how are you going to get those build, how the developers are going to give you those builds. On those builds you are going to test your application. Now, for the development perspective, they have different type of build handling tools. There are some tools like Maven or Gradle that they normally use for providing or giving you the build. So there are different type of this configuration management tools as well, which the developers will use for the build management perspective. And finally, I mean, you need to keep all the record of what you are testing, what if you are raising any defects, if you are reporting any defects. So you need to provide some of the logs for that, or you need to provide some of the screenshots and the details of the defect that we will see today in the next slide. So all these things, for managing all these things, we need some kind of tool. So all this comes under the configuration management. Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
any question, anything
No,
that
no.
you have in mind? Okay. So configuration management usually include the following elements. What are those elements? So the first one is identifying the configuration item, because you can understand that all these configuration items or all these different configuration tools, so that varies from project to project, project or product to product. I mean, the project or product that you are currently working on, so they're based on their requirement, they are going to use these different type of tools or different type of test data management or test cases management or incident management or build management tools. Okay, so that is so all these elements depends on the requirement of that particular product or that particular project. So you need to first identify. So this is the thing that is normally identified during the from the for the test team. It is normally identified during the test planning phase itself. From the development perspective, they also identify these things in their planning phase itself. And after that, when you work on the project or you work on the product, so time to time, based on the requirement, these things can be identified and utilized as well. Next is the version control of configuration items. So what do you mean by version control? As I mentioned you, that there could be different version of test cases, there could be different version of test data, or from the development perspective, they need to maintain different version of code as well. So this comes under the version control of configuration items. uh, from the testing perspective, you can use different tools like Jira, or there are several other tools which are available in the market as well. Some of the version control tools are called like GitHub or Bitbucket as well, which we can use as a version control tools. Now the release management. So for the release management, like, we have different kind of documents, the different type of metrics, and the reports that you are going to provide to your to your management or to your stakeholders. So all those documents and those things has to be kept somewhere. So for that as well, different organization have different kind of capabilities or different kind of tools that they use for release management and managing the documents and all. Sometimes they can use some of the like drives or some of the storages to keep all the documents. In some organization, they use different type of tools, like there is something called Confluence, where you can keep all your documents and you can create different type of pages and documents and keep your documents there. So those comes under the release management tool. And the bill management tool, so as I mentioned that there are some automated softwares which will provide you the bills. So it is mainly the work of the developers, and the developers will actually handle this build management tool. But overall, it's a product that is used by the whole team, so that's why this comes under the configuration management. So there are different tools like there is Maven, there is Gradle, which are used as the build management tools. Then the controlling changes. So as I mentioned, that there will be different changes that will be occurring when you will be working on a particular product or project in a specific the you can use any like software development life cycle model. So based on that, the changes will be happening, and then you need to control those changes. Then tracking status, like whenever you are executing your test cases, so on a daily basis, the test lead will provide the status report to the management or to the customer. So you need to track your daily status, and that has to be, the report has to be provided to the stakeholders. So tracking the status, for to track the status you need some kind of tool or some kind of configuration management software as well. And finally, when the audit of the project will be happen, so at that time as well, you need all the documents that you have prepared for your release, or all the test cases, all the deliverables that you are having, that you need to provide to the stakeholders. So all those things has to be audited, and for that as well we need some kind of configuration management tool.
Yeah, but
Okay.
who? But I heard the mention of these tools, but how do we get any understanding, teaching on how to use these tools?
So see, regarding the bill management and also, we are not going to handle those tools. So those will be mainly handled by the developers.
Oh,
Now
okay.
the first thing is the version controlling tool. So for version controlling, you will be using Jira. Okay, normally maximum in the projects it's the Jira that is used. Okay, and so for using Jira, it needs some kind of licenses because it's not a free tool. So normally when you'll be starting working on a project or in a product, so at that time they will give you the training on how to use those particular tools. Now coming to the tracking status, and also that is also handled by Jira itself. From Jira you can get the reports, and you can then pass it on to the stakeholders, or to the customer. And now for the defect management, so for that also Jira is available. So in the Jira itself you can actually log those incidents or raise the defects, and then the defect lifecycle which we are going to see today, that is handled. So that thing I can show you from my instance. I mean, in my project we are also using Jira. So from there I can show you how the defect lifecycle is managed. And yeah, so when you will start working on a particular project or product, so based on the tool they are using, they will give you the training on how to handle those things.
Mm.
Okay. And the other things like this release management or build management, so those are normally done by the managers or by the development team, so that those you don't need to think a lot. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So now what is risk in testing? So risk, what do you mean by risk? We have already talked a lot about risks. So when we talk about risk, when you hear the risk in our testing, so what could be the possible risks? I mean, what is your guess?
This means there could be a defect
Yeah.
uh, that will cause the malfunction. It affects the functionality or the
Hmm.
outcome.
Yes, absolutely. So so the defect can be coming from, or might be coming from different ways, right? It could be the reason could be the requirement. So the requirement is not specific, or the requirement is having some anomalies there. so that might cause some of the risks while the development is in progress. So that's why we have some of the models which focus more on the risk part, right? Which what was
Mhm.
that model?
This I know spiral.
Yes, it was the spiral model which was having a specific phase of risk analysis in it. So
Mm.
yes, so risk is very much important, and whatever which can block the progress of the testing or the development, that can be identified as a potential risk. Okay,
Mm.
and the probability of that the risk will actually block something or will have some impact can be 0 to 100%. So it might happen that you are considering it as a risk, but actually it's not a risk, and you will be able to proceed with your work. But it might also happen that it can become a blocker issue, and you won't be able to proceed with anything until the risk is mitigated. Okay, so the
Mm.
probability of having it in the product or in the project is between 0 to 100%, and the chance of a risk becoming an outcome is dependent on the level of risk associated with its possible negative consequences. So that's why it's very much important that when you are foreseeing the risk that is in coming towards the project or product, you talk it out, you discuss it during your calls or stand up calls, so that everyone can be involved, the higher management can be involved in that, and it can be mitigated before it becomes a major issue in the project or in the product. Okay,
Mm.
so there could be different categories of risk, like the product risk. So product risk is basically factors relating to what is produced by the work or the thing that you are testing. And it could be project risk as well, so factors relating to the way the work is carried out, or the test project, so that those are called as project risk. So these are normally some of the very much what you can say theoretical aspect, and you won't expect much questions from this side in your interviews as well. Okay, so the
Mm.
thing that is mostly important from today's session is this incident management. So you can expect two or three questions from this incident management, the priority, severity, different type of priority, different type of severity. So that is very much important from the interview perspective. Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
so what do you understand by incident? So incident is basically the defect, the bugs, the errors or failures, so those are called as incident. And when you are executing your test, so it could be the different at the different level of testing. Okay, so what are the different level of testing?
Unit testing,
Yes, yes,
integration
unit testing,
testing,
or
system integration,
yes, absolutely. So there are,
acceptance testing.
yes, yes, component testing or unit testing, then it will
Mhm.
be the component integration testing, then it will be the system testing, system integration testing, and finally the acceptance testing, user acceptance
Mhm.
testing, where we have alpha testing and beta testing.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So those are the different level of testing, and on those levels, different type of testing is done. Right? There are different type of testing as well, and those can be done by the developers or the testers, or it can be the stakeholders or the customers who will be testing the product. Now when they are testing these products, they will be finding different type of errors, different type of bugs, defects or failures, right? And then
Mhm.
when they are finding these defects and bugs, so they need to log it somewhere, so that the communication between the development team or the team who will be actually fixing these defects and the tester can be happen in a smooth way, and everything can be documented and logged as per the requirement. Okay, so for this purpose, we need some of the incident management tool or incident management software. And then there is a incident or defect life cycle as well, which will help us to manage the defects on a better way. Okay, so that is called as incident management.
Mhm.
So when executing a test, you might observe that the actual results vary from the expected result. So when the actual result is different from the expected result, then it is called as defect or bug, or depending on the level of testing that you are finding it, if it is being found in the development time, so that is called as the error. If you are finding it during the testing phase, it is called as defect or bug.
Wow.
And then if you are finding it during the production, it is called as a
Failure.
failure. But
Failure.
overall we can call it as incident, or overall it is called a defect as well. I mean, whenever you are
Mhm.
finding any error or bug or any failure, so it is called as defect as well. So now, uh, whenever you are raising this defect or bug, there are certain things that you need to provide as part of the defect. Okay, so what are those things? So in a defect, the first thing is you need to provide a description of the defect. Okay, so that will be a very basic description about the defect. Then you need to provide the bill number. Okay, so what is the bill number that you are testing? What are the configuration? Okay, what are the different steps that you performed to find that defect? Then what is some specific, if you have some specific logs, so that you need to attach. And then if you have some specific environment or test data, so that you need to provide in the defect. And then the reproduction steps, as I mentioned to you. Then the priority, what is the priority of that defect, what is the severity of that defect. And then if you have some specific things related to that defect, so those things need to be presented or uh, given in that particular defect details, so that when the developer will try to reproduce that defect in the development environment, they are able to follow the steps that you have provided, and they will be able to reproduce and then fix the defect. And then when the defect is fixed by the developer, so he will assign it back to you, right? For you need to perform the retesting of that defect.
Mhm.
So now when you need to retest the defect, you need to again look at the steps that you performed earlier, and then you can perform the steps, and you can retest the defect to make sure that the bug is fixed. So for that purpose, this documentation and providing these details are very much important, because when you will be working on a particular project, there will be hundreds of defects, right? You will get almost hundreds, 200s, 300s of defects that will be raising for a particular release. And now when you will be retesting those defects, is not easy to remember all the steps that you had performed earlier to find that defect. So that's why it is very much important to map the defects with the test cases as well. So when your test cases, when you are finding any defect while you are doing the testing, so you need to mark that test case as failed one. And then when you are doing the retesting of the defect, then you need to make the status as pass, and you will close the defect. So all these things we will see in the defect life cycle, how the life cycle of a particular defect looks like. Okay,
Mhm.
any questions, any queries?
No, no.
Okay, so the last point, you can see an incident report describes some situation, behavior, or event that occurred during testing that requires further investigation. In many cases, an incident report consists of one or two screens full of information gathered by a defect tracking tool. So, what are those informations that I think those should be provided here? Okay. If not, then I think I should show you, because that is also important. So in the interview, they might ask you that what are the different uh, different points that you need to mention while you are raising a defect. Okay, so I'll just stop the sharing for a moment and I'll show you what are the different things that you need to provide when you are raising a defect in a tool, say Jira. If you are using Jira, then what are the different things that you need to provide? I will just show you. Hmm. Okay, so I hope my screen is visible to you again.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is an
Yes.
example of the Jira tool that I was telling you. So in the Jira, say the issue type is a bug or it's a defect. Okay, the project, it could be your project that you are working on. Okay,
Mhm.
now what are the different things you can see here? So the status. So what is the status that will come later? Then a summary of the defect has to be given. Okay, and I think it will be better if you can just note down these things what you need to uh, you know uh, give while you are raising a defect, because this is a very important question for interview. They might ask you that while raising a defect, what are the different details that you need to provide. The first thing is you need to provide a summary. Okay, then defect category is not important. Module is basically on which module of the uh, application you are getting the defect. So there are different modules of an application, as you already mentioned. If you take the example of amazon.com, we have different modules there. So based on that,
Mhm.
which module of that product you are getting uh, uh, the defect. Now what are
Mhm.
the system type? Okay, so it could be, it basically depends on different type of system that you will have on your project or your product. Then the these things are not important. So yeah, version found. So on which version of the product you are getting, or the version that you are testing on. So when you will be working on a particular release, you will get different versions, different builds from the developers. So they will provide you the version number. So this version number you need to provide when you are raising a defect. Okay, the build number as well. Then you need to provide a description. Okay, and in this description you need to provide the reproduction steps as well. Okay, so if the developer wants to reproduce the bug, so how, what are the different steps that you need to provide or you need to perform. And then along with that you need to provide the test data as well, and the platform as well where you are what you are using. Like you can use the Chrome or browser, or you can use the Firefox browser, or Mozilla or IE browser. So based on those you need to uh, provide those details and all. So the design notes is for the developer. They will actually provide that. The acceptance criteria is what are the different criteria that has to be fulfilled to make sure that this bug is fixed. Okay, so that comes under the acceptance criteria. Now this steps to reproduce. So it now it depends on the tools, which tool you are using. So sometimes you will have this steps to reproduce as a different field, sometimes you won't have. So if you are having this as a different field, so you need to provide the reproduction steps here. Otherwise you can provide it inside the description itself. So now you can see the severity of the defects that you need to provide, the priority of the defect that you need to provide. And the sprint, I mean, if you are working on a agile project, so which sprint you are currently working on, that sprint has to be provided. And then you can link a issue or a defect with other issue as well, so that also you can provide. And finally the assignee, so you can assign it to the developer. And finally you need to attach the logs, or you need to attach the, say, the screenshots as well, okay, as part of the effect. Okay, so that was what I wanted to show you. Okay, so now I think you are able to understand, right, what are the different details that we need to provide
Yeah.
in a defect.
Yeah.
Okay. So whatever like we discussed till now, so that is written here, so we can just go through it. So when we talk about incidents, we mean to indicate the possibility that a questionable behavior is not necessary a true defect. We log this incident so that we can keep the record of what we observed and can follow up the incident and track what is done to correct it. So basically whenever you are raising a defect, so the developers will provide their input as well. I mean, every time you are logging a defect, it's not like this can be a valid defect. It can also happen that your understanding is not correct, and that's why uh, it's looking like a defect to you, but it's actually not a defect. So in that case as well, the developer will provide his input. Or if there is a confusion between the testing team and the development team, so the defect can be referred to some of the stakeholder, or some of the customer, or some of the business analyst as well, and they will then go through the details of the defect and they can provide their input. So all this communication between different team or different person will happen through this defect, or through the tool that you will be using. Okay.
Mhm.
So to track all the details, this defect logging or the defect tool will be used. So it is most common to find incident logging or defect reporting processes and tools in use during formal independent test phases. But it's always advisable to log, report, track, and manage incidents found during development and reviews, because it gives useful information about the early and cheaper defect detection and removal activities. So if you are doing some informal testing, okay, or informal reviews, and at that time as well you are finding any kind of mismatch of the functionality or any kind of defect, so that should be logged in the defect management tool as well. Because see, in on the first day itself I told you, right, that whenever you are finding any kind of differences, just log it. You don't need to think that okay, whether it's correct or not, that will be decided later. That can be decided by the management, or by the BAs, or by the stakeholders. But if you are finding any anomalies and that is not being reported, so it could cause, or it's a bigger risk for the latter point of time, right? Because in the production phase if it's found, so that time fixing those things, or um, making those changes would be more costlier. And then the fingers might be pointed out to you as well, that why it was not found during the testing. So it is always recommended, or it is always better to report those bugs whenever you are finding it. As soon as seeing any differences between the actual outcome and the expected outcome, just log it. Talk to the developer, or talk to the stakeholder, or talk to uh, BAs, or whoever is having the good understanding. just show it to them, and if it's confirmed, just log it. Okay. So
Mhm.
incidents that are logged may not be tracked and forgotten, which can result in the incident occurring again. So if you're not, if you don't have a proper incident management tool, so at that time, so suppose there I have seen some of the project where they use some of the Excel file, to log the defects, and then it becomes very much difficult for the development team as well to track those defects from the Excel file and all. So that's why a particular dedicated defect management tool is very much important, so that everything can be tracked and documented as part of the defect management. And
Mhm.
after logging the incidents that occur in the field, or after deployment of the system, we also need some way of reporting, tracking, and managing them. It is most common to find defects reported against the code or system itself. However, there are cases where defects are reported against requirements and design specification, user and operator guides, and tests as well. So basically, it says like whenever you are doing the requirement analysis and those, so at that time you can find the defects, and those has to be logged as well. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so what are the different benefits of reporting the incident? I think we have already discussed
Mhm.
about that as well. So, in some projects, a very large number of defects are found. Even on smaller projects where hundreds or a fewer defects are found, it is very difficult to keep track of all of them unless you have a process for reporting, classifying, assigning, and managing the defects from discovery to final resolution. So, that is understandable, right? The tool
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
have shown you, so all the details that we are providing there, so if there is
Mhm.
an, a particular defect lifecycle management tool is not present, so all those details you can't provide to the developer or to the stakeholder, and it will be very difficult to manage as well. So that's why incident management tool is very much required. An incident report contains a description of the misbehavior that was observed and classification of that misbehavior. As with any written communication, it helps to have clear goals in mind when writing. One common goal for such reports is to provide programmers, managers, and others with detailed information about the behavior observed and the defect. So obviously, right, the description you are providing, the summary you are providing, the different build details, the version details, the steps to reproduce, so all those details that you are providing, so that will help in the communication channel, right? And that will help
Mhm.
everyone to understand the defect, or track the defect. Another is to support the analysis of trends in aggregate defect data, either for understanding more about a particular set of problem or tests, or for understanding and reporting the overall level of system quality. Finally, defect reports, which analyzed over a project or even across projects, give information that can lead to development and test process improvement. So what do you understand by it? So basically, when the testing is done, or even when the testing is progress, so at that time you can get the defect of you can get the detail of the defects, or the report of the defects. Now, from that report, if you are finding that okay, some of the modules are having a lot of defects, so that means the quality of the product is not good, and there are risk associated with it, because if you are finding so many defects from a particular module, so that means the development has not been done in the proper way, or the quality of the application is not good. And for that, some risks can be associated with that, and the stakeholders, or even if the managers, they can come into the picture and they can take some action based on that. Or like for a particular overall release, at the end of the release, the developers or the managers can, or the test leads, they can analyze the defect. I mean, how many defects have been found that by the testing team, or how many. So there are different metrics as well that are available. How many defects are marked as duplicate defect, or how many defects are marked as invalid defects. So based on that, the quality of testing is also determined. Okay,
Mhm.
so all these reports can be utilized using a defect management tool. And finally, the programmers need the information in the report to find and fix the defects. Before that happens, though, managers should review and prioritize the defects so that the scarce of testing and developer resources are spent fixing and confirmation testing the most important defects. So the priority and the severity that you are providing as part of the defect. So based on that, the defects can be prioritized and it can be assigned to the developers for fixation as well. So that's why all these details are required, and a test or incident reporting tool or incident management tool is very much required. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the next is the defect life cycle. So let's take a small break of 5 minutes here, and after that we'll
Mhm.
continue with the defect life cycle.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, so if in the interview, if they ask you that what are the different details that you need to provide while you are raising a defect, so what will be your answer then?
First, I'll provide an ID. Then I'll provide how to describe the defect.
Hmm.
Then which module, which version, the build number, the description of defect, how to reproduce it,
Yeah.
um, then the severity.
Yes. Anything else?
Assign it to the assignee also, and then
Yeah.
screenshots of your own testing the defect. Screenshots, attach all the screenshots.
Yeah.
And
And then you need to provide the logs as well. If you are able to get
yeah.
some logs, so you need to provide that log as well. And along with severity, you need to provide the priority as well.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Uh, okay. So this is. I hope the recording is on. Right. Yeah. Okay. So this is the most important topic of today, and you can expect this question from in any interview. Like
Mhm.
whenever you will be appearing for any interview, you will get this question. They will ask you to, describe the defect life cycle, and
Mhm.
this is very simple. This is there is not uh, a lot of things here, but you need to remember it step by step. Okay. So the first one is whenever you are creating a defect, so it will be in the new state. So you remember when I was showing you that new field was coming, the
Mhm.
status new.
Mhm.
Yeah. So whenever you are creating a defect, it will be in the new state. Okay. After that,
Mhm.
what you will do, you will assign it to the some developer.
Mhm.
Now the developer will start looking at the defect.
Mhm.
Okay. So he will, open the defect, and he will analyze whether it's a valid defect or it's an invalid defect.
Mhm.
So if he finds that yes, it's a valid defect, he will make the fixations, right?
Mhm.
So whatever fix is required for the defect, he will fix that, and then he will assign it back to you for retesting.
Mhm.
So then you will retest the defect. Then if you are finding that okay, the issue is fixed now, you will make it verified, and then you will close the defect,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But while you are retesting the defect, if you are finding that no, the defect is still there, what will you do? You will reopen the defect and again assign it back to the developer.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is it understandable?
Yeah. So we cannot fix all defects. I mean, we can reassign it to the developer.
So basically, if the issue is actually not fixed, so maybe the developer was not able to fix it, or by mistake he has assigned back to you without fixing the
Mhm.
defect. So
Mhm.
at that time, you will again get the issues because the issue is not fixed.
Yeah.
So then you need to reopen it. If
Mhm.
you're finding that the issue is fixed, you will close the defect, you will make it as
Mhm.
verified, and you will close the defect by providing the screenshots or the comments that yes, the issue you have retested it and now it's working fine. So you need to attach the screenshot as a proof that it is now working fine. But if it's
Mhm.
not working, so that means the issue is not fixed, the defect is not fixed, and in that case you need to reopen and assign it back to the developer.
Mhm.
Okay. So now let's see what the developer can do from here. So when you are assigning a defect to a developer, so it might also he might get or according to him, he might think that it's not a valid defect,
Mhm.
right? So if he
Yeah.
thinks that it's not a valid defect, he can reject the defect.
Mhm.
Okay. Then the next thing is the developer might think, or when you are working in a project, there will be different like testers who will be testing the product at the same time. Now suppose in your team three testers are testing, okay, and some other tester has found a defect and he has already logged it. Okay, now you are testing the similar thing and you have also found the defect and you have raised the same defect. So that
Mm.
means you have raised a duplicate defect,
Mm.
right? So in
Yeah.
that case, the developer, if he finds that a similar defect is already existing, so he can mark the defect as a duplicate defect and he won't fix the defect that has been raised later, because he will be fixing the defect that has been raised earlier.
Okay.
Okay, so in that
Mhm.
case, the defect will be marked as the duplicate defect. And
Mhm.
sometimes, as we already discussed about it in the previous sessions, that sometimes if the priority or severity of a defect is not high, in those cases, if the defect has been found in the last stage of testing or last stage of the release, so the management or the stakeholders, they can decide to defer a defect and to fix it in the next releases. So in those
Okay.
cases, the defect will be marked as a deferred defect.
Default. Mhm.
Yeah. So when you will be asked about the different stages of a defect or the whole life cycle of a defect, you need to touch upon all these different states.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So now, the interviewer will ask you that what is the defect life cycle. Okay,
Mhm.
so you have described everything to you. Now what he will ask you is, suppose you have raised a defect. Okay, and the developer has analyzed the defect and he has marked it as a rejected. He thinks that it's not a valid defect, but according to you it's a valid defect. So what are you going to do?
Share it with the team lead,
Share it with.
the lead of the team.
Okay.
Discuss with your team,
Mm-hmm.
and then redirect it to the developer only.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you are partially correct. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to talk to the developer first. Okay, because
Okay.
there could be some miscommunication or misunderstanding regarding the requirement as well, right? So maybe
Mhm.
the developer is not able to understand the requirement, he has understood something else, and you have some other understanding of the requirement, which is causing this miscommunication or misunderstanding. So the first thing, when a defect is rejected by a developer, the first thing that you need to do is first read through his comments. So if the developer is rejecting a defect, in that case he needs to provide his comment in the defect itself. Wherever you are tracking the defect in that tool, he will provide his comment. Now when he has provided his comment, you need to go through that first and understand why the developer has rejected the defect. Okay, now you need to talk to the developer about that, about your understanding, why do you think that the defect is there, and why the developer is thinking that the defect is not a valid defect. So now if you are able to understand that, okay, you are incorrect, the developer is correct, you have some miscommunication or gap of knowledge which resulted in raising an invalid defect, so that's fine, you can close the defect. But if you think that you are correct and the developer has some misinformation, or the developer is has not analyzed the defect correctly, so in that case you can call him, you can have a discussion with him, and you can make him understand what is your analysis, and you can also show him how the defect can be reproduced. Now after that also, if the developer is not ready to understand, or if the developer is quite rigid to not accept the defect, in that case, after that you can talk to your lead, or you can discuss it in the daily stand up call, or there are other defect triage calls as well. Then you can discuss about that, or you can involve the stakeholders or the person who has the knowledge of the better knowledge of the application, so you can involve them as well.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, so this will be your step by step process, and in the interview as well you need to answer it in this way. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So these are the different phases of the defect life cycle. So first one is the new. When a
Mhm.
defect is logged and posted for the first time, its state is given as new. Okay. After that, the tester has posted the bug. The lead of the tester approves that the bug is genuine, and he assigns the bug to corresponding developer and the developer team. Its state given as assigned. Okay. After that, at this state, the developer has started analyzing and working on the defect phase. So at that time, it will be on open. After that, it will be on the fixed state. So when developer makes necessary code changes and verifies the changes, and he or she can make bug status as fixed, and the bug is passed to testing team. So after that, you will be retesting the bug, and the tester tests the bug again after it got fixed by the developer. If the bug is not present in the software, he approves the bug is fixed and changes his status to verified. And if the bug still exists even after the bug is fixed by the developer, the tester changes the status to reopen. The bug goes through the life cycle once again.
Mhm.
Clear? Do you have any
Yeah.
query?
No. No.
Okay, so whenever you are asked about the defect life cycle, you need to remember all these steps, and then you need to explain the things.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So then closed, once the bug is fixed, it is tested by the tester. If the tester feels that the bug no longer exists in the software, he changes the status of the bug to closed. This state means that the bug is fixed, tested, and approved. Okay.
Mhm.
Then duplicate, if the bug is repeated twice or the two bugs mention the same concept of the bug, then one bug status is changed to duplicate.
Mhm.
Rejected, if the developer feels that the bug is not genuine, that means invalid, he rejects the bug, then the state of the bug is changed to rejected. Deferred, the bug changed to deferred state means the bug is expected to be fixed in next releases. Not a bug, the status given as not a bug if there is no change in the functionality of the application.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is again the thing that we have already discussed. So what
Mhm.
am I going to do is I'll ask you to read through it by yourself,
Mhm.
and then if you
Mhm.
have any query, you can ask me. So the severity and priority we have already discussed about
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and we discussed in detail.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you can just read through it, and then you can ask me if you have any query.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Because you explained it that time and we had a few examples.
Mm-hmm.
Severity, I understand, affects the functionality immediately. So that is severity, and priority is how quickly the bug has to be fixed. It could be high, low priority.
Yeah, yeah. So in severity, it is the extent to which the defect can affect the software. It, in other words, it defines the impact that a given defect has on the system. For example, if an application or web page crashes when a remote link is clicked, in that case, clicking the remote link by an user is rare, but the impact of application crashing is severe. So the severity high, but the priority is low. Okay. What is priority?
Mm.
Priority defines the order in which we should resolve a defect. We means the developer should resolve a defect. Should we fix it now or it can wait?
Mm.
Uh, this priority status is set by the tester to the developer, mentioning the time frame to fix the defect. If high priority is mentioned, then the developer has to fix it at the earliest. The
Mhm.
priority status is set based on the customer requirements. For example, if the company name is incorrect in the homepage of the website, then the priority is high and severity is low to fix it. Why the severity is low here?
Severity is low because it can be fixed later, right? Com- com-
You know,
com-
so if the company name is incorrect in the
it
homepage of
is
the
it is
website,
not it is not affecting the functionality
yes,
right now.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. It is not affecting the functionality, but as the company name is wrong, so that might affect the branding of the company. So that's why it's a
Mhm.
high priority defect which should be fixed as soon as possible by the developer.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so severity can be of the following types. Bug can be a severity which is of critical, then it can be major, it can be moderate, it can be minor, it can be cosmetic. So, see, whatever we had discussed earlier, high priority, high severity, medium, and low priority, low severity. So, that is all, mentioned here in different terms. The terms are used here
Mhm.
as critical, major, moderate, minor, or cosmetic, but the idea is similar. So, what is critical severity? The defect that results in the termination of the complete system or one or more component of the system and causes extensive corruption of the data. The failed function is unusable, and there is no acceptable alternative method to achieve the required result. Then the severity will be stated as critical. So that means high severity bug. So high severity bug
Mhm.
means your system is crashing. You're trying
Mhm.
to log into the application and the system is crashing, or on the home page you are clicking on the product and you are getting error. So that
Mhm.
means the system is not at all testable or usable. So that means it is a critical severity bug or high severity bug. Okay.
Mhm.
Then what is major? I think there is no major difference between this major and critical. And mostly, when you will be raising the defect, you will get three option only: high severity, medium severity, or low severity. But there could be some tools where you will get these different options like critical, major, moderate, minor, or cosmetic. So, what is major? The defect that results in termination of the complete system or one or more component of the system and causes extensive corruption of the data. The failed function is, so basically these are same. The critical and major are same. Okay.
Mhm.
Then moderate, the defects that does not result in the termination but causes the system to produce incorrect, incomplete, and inconsistent results. When the severity will be treated as moderate. What is minor? The defect has, so this is basically the low severity
Low
defect.
prior.
Low
Uh-huh.
severity, the
Yes.
defect that does not result in termination and does not damage the usability of the system, and the desired results can be easily obtained by working around the defects. Then the severity is stated as minor. And what is cosmetic severity? Cosmetic severity is, suppose you need very small changes on the UI, or that is not a defect. That is not a defect means what is expected and what is actual, that is matching, but there could be some enhancement of the system that you can suggest. Okay, so
Mhm.
maybe there are some color they have used which is not properly visible. Okay, but the
Mhm.
functionality is working. So in that case it is some enhancement, or the look and feel of the application that you are providing. So those are not properly, you can say, as a defect, but those are some
Excuse
cosmetic
me.
changes. Yeah.
Excuse me. Can I take a pause of 5 minutes? Somebody's at the door.
Yeah, 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 sure, sure.
I'm here back. Sorry. Hello? I'm back.
Yeah.
Sorry. Somebody rang the doorbell.
No issues, no issues. Okay. So we were talking about the cosmetic defect, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So cosmetic is basically whenever it's not a defect, but when you have some suggestions of improvement or some enhancements, so
Mm.
those kind of defects can be treated as cosmetic defect. Like the
Mm.
color of a text is not properly visible. So does it, change the functionality?
No,
No,
no, no,
but
no.
you're suggesting some enhancement or some the very minimal changes, so like the look and feel of the application, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those can be termed as a cosmetic severity defect. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now the priority types. So priority, this we already knew, right?
Yeah.
There are three type of priorities: the high priority defect, the medium priority, and the low priority. So low
Mm.
priority defect means this is a defect which should be repaired, but the fix can be done, in the later stage of time. So it can be deferred until after more serious defect have been fixed. What is a medium priority defect? So the defect should be resolved in the normal course of development activities. It can wait until a new build or version is created. And what is high priority defect? The defect must be resolved as soon as possible because the defect is affecting the application or the product severely. The system cannot be used until the repair has been done. Okay.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So again, regarding this as well, again, I mean, from the interview perspective, the very common question is, give them the examples of a high priority low severity defect, or high severity low priority defect, or high severity high priority defect. So these are very important, and you has to be ready with examples. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, then I guess we are almost done with all the topics that we are having for today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have any query or question?
I understand when you're teaching, but I have to sit down and recall all this. Not the severity priority, the other
Yeah.
aspects of it. But I understand what you've taught is very clear, but I have to recall it.
Mhm. The main thing is this, from today's session,
Defective.
this defect
Oh,
life cycle. Okay. So this
okay.
defect life cycle, whenever you will, think it in a step by step process, that what will actually happen when you are raising a defect. So you'll be able to understand it, that okay, the first thing is I'm testing a product, so I'm seeing any deviation of the expected and actual output, I will log a defect.
Mm.
So when
Mm.
it is logged, okay, what will happen next? It will be assigned to a developer, right? Because the
Mm.
developer is going to fix it. So
Mm.
when I'm raising the defect, it's in new status. After that, it will be assigned to a developer. So after it is assigned to a developer, what will happen? They will start, first he will analyze the defect, whether it's actually a defect or not, right? So it
Mm.
it will be in the open status. After that, what will happen? If he finds that it's a valid defect, he will fix it, and he will assign back to the tester for testing. Now I will retest it as a tester, and if I find that the defect is fixed, so I will just close the defect. So that is
Mm.
one flow, right?
Mm.
So
Mhm.
now what is another flow? Now when the developer is actually, analyzing the defect, he finds that a similar defect is already there.
Mm.
Okay. So what will he do? He will mark
Duplicate.
it as a
Duplicate.
duplicate defect. He will close
Uh-huh.
the defect.
Mm.
Now the next thing, what will happen? If the developer finds that it's not a valid defect, so at that time, what will
Rejected.
he do? He will
Rejected.
reject it. Now when the developer is rejecting it, again you need to check that whether it's actually a valid defect or invalid defect,
Mm.
right? If you think that it's a valid defect, you need to fight against him, and you need to again, talk about it with the other, manager or stakeholder, and then you need to confirm that whether it's actually an invalid defect or not. Okay, so maybe the developer have some other understanding and that's why he has rejected the defect. So you need to talk with other members as well, and then you need to confirm whether it's actually an invalid defect or not. And
But a
then if
logical question, but I think it's in my logic, I think the developer has more knowledge than the tester. So do you
no,
think that?
no, it's not correct, because the developer is also understanding from the requirement, right? The requirement
Mhm.
specification documents that you are getting. Now he might also have the misunderstanding, and based on the misunderstanding he has developed the product.
Hmm.
So that's why there will be defect, right? If
Hmm.
he is not able to understand the requirement correctly, and based on that he has developed the product, so that means there will be defect on the product. Now when you
Mhm.
are raising the defect based on your understanding which is correct, so he won't be able to accept that, because from his understanding whatever he has developed is correct. Or maybe the requirement was changed in between and that information was not available to him. He
Okay.
has developed with the old understanding or the old requirement,
Mhm.
but based on the new requirement this is a defect.
Hmm.
So for that purpose you need to talk to him first. If he is not able to understand, you need to talk to maybe the manager or the development lead or the test lead, or even the stakeholders, the customers as well, and then you can get the feedback from them, and based on that decision can be taken,
Oh,
right? And
yeah.
the final one is whenever you are testing a bug, you are retesting a bug, if you think that the bug is not fixed, you can reopen it and assign it back to the developer. So these are
Oh,
the different phases, or how the defect will be moved from one person to another person.
okay.
Okay,
Sure.
apart from that I don't think anything is very much important from today's session.
Severity priority.
Yeah, the severity priority and the defect life cycle, that is
Oh,
most important from today's session.
okay.
Okay, then I think we
Thank.
are good with today.
Uh-huh.
Let's meet tomorrow. And
Okay.
did you get a chance to review our session?
I did not do anything. Only one session I reviewed as soon as I came back.
Okay, I was talking about the the providing the feedback and all.
Oh, no, no, I did not do anything because I came back, I started work.
Okay, okay, do
I
you
will do
have the
it.
links or shall I provide it?
If you provide it, will be good.
Okay,
You sent it
let
the other day. I thought I was
yes,
under the impression when I opened the class, I can see the link. No?
yeah, you should get the
Say,
link, but let me
class.
just ping you again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these are the links, and you can visit those and provide your feedback there.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you. Uh-huh.
okay, have a good night and see you tomorrow then. Bye.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.